Hello folks, Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for a special video. So you might not be aware of this, especially if you're not a Magic Online person, but Magic Online currently has these Mythic event tokens in the store. And if you buy one of these, you not only get entry to some event, you also get access to every card in Magic's existence on Magic Online, with just a couple of exceptions. And that's really, really cool because in a lot of cases, a Magic Online Legacy deck might run you, $300, $500, $1,200 or something like that. So, as kind of a variety streamer, I have the option to play all of these cool decks all of the time. I have a card hoarder loan account, and I get to try out all sorts of cool things. And now you can have the opportunity to do the same. So, what I wanted to do today was highlight my top 10 recommendations for things to try out while you have a loan account. And we are going to boil down and do 10 super mini deck techs that last less than a minute each. And I hope you enjoy this. If you want to see more legacy content like this in the future, that's not just leagues, but is kind of recommendations and stuff like that, please consider throwing a like this way or subscribing to the channel if you aren't already subscribed. Let's do this. All right, first up at slot number 10, I recommend Enchantress. In case you're not familiar with the general strategy, you put one of the various Enchantress effects into play that allow you to draw a card every time that you cast an enchantment spell, and you churn through your deck, drawing more and more and more cards until you eventually lock out your opponent or find a way to win. This specific version of Enchantress is trying to assemble the Rest in Peace and Helm of Obedience combo to mill your opponent out in one go. You can also lock out your opponent with Solitary Confinement to make everything that they're doing basically irrelevant. This deck got a major shot in the arm last year with the printing of Destiny Spinner, which means that all your enchantment spells can't be countered, and it can also be a win condition that you can fetch off of Green Sun's Zenith. The sideboard gives you a decent number of powerful options, including one of my favorite legacy cards right now, Carpet of Flowers. So check this one out, and the deck list for all of these will be available in the comments. Next up at slot number 9, I recommend trying a Delver deck. And not just any boring Delver deck, but how about a spicy one? How about one featuring Clout of the Dominus, which is an enchantment in Aura. And as long as the enchanted creature is blue, it gets +1/+1 as Shroud. And if it's red, it gets +1/+1 and has haste. I don't know, if you throw that onto a blue and red creature, or especially one that has like prowess on crack, that probably adds up into a really annoying threat very, very quickly. This is a Grixis Delver list that I found that features some self-harm in that Scourge of the Skyclave wants players to have a low life total, and then it's sort of a Death's Shadow Delver sort of effect. If you're not on board with trying a 3-color deck and you instead want to try a 2-color version, there is also a blue-red version, recently featured by PVDH Magic, that plays the Clout of the Dominus in the main deck, and I will link that deck list as well. For my next recommendation at slot number 8, I recommend Black-Red Goblins. So Goblins is a deck with a rich history and legacy, and recent years have given it some new toys. Most notably, Muxus, and this card is disgusting. It allows you to dump in so many goblins, and you can actually do it as soon as turn 2 if you cheat it in via a Goblin Lackey. One of the other things that really allows this deck to compete is Munitions Expert, which is removal on a goblin. You can vial this in or make it uncounterable via Cavernous Souls and answer dangerous cards like Dreadhorde Arcanus that otherwise often threaten to take away the game in these fair decks. I love how good the endgame of this deck is. Combination of cards like Pashalik Mons and Sling-Gang Lieutenant mean that your opponent can be very, very dead quickly, even if they're at 20 life. And cards like Goblin Ringleader give you a lot of card advantage as well. Next up at slot number 7, I recommend Dead Guy Ale. Dead Guy Ale is a black-white disruptive deck that gains card advantage through things like Dark Confidant that kind of draw you cards, or by taking cards away from your opponent and getting 2-for-1s. If you're able to get some sort of card advantage over time with equipment, planeswalkers, or things of that nature, it's okay if you 1-for-1 yourself early trying to disrupt your opponents. This deck features a new card, Opposition Agent, which can be real shenanigans when put into play off of a Dark Ritual. This is a deck that I highly recommend if you miss the days of Legacy long since past, and you want to feel nostalgic for a time where decks like Stoneblade were relatively common. This deck has a lot of tools at its disposal that will give it a fighting chance in most matchups. Veil of Summer is something that has made discard less common recently, but this is a pretty good choice if you do want to try a discard-based deck. Next up at slot number 6, I recommend Rainbow Depths. Now, this deck is based around the Dark Depths land, and when you remove all of the counters from this, you get a 2020 Tentacle Monster that kills your opponent dead in one shot. Okay, sounds like a good deal. And we can do this very, very quickly with either Vampire Hexmage or Thespian Stage. This version is called Rainbow Depths because it's playing lands like Mana Confluence, Gemstone Mine, and City of Brass that tap for all of the colors instead of things like dual lands. This deck is relatively resilient and features plenty of tutors like Crop Rotation, Elvish Reclaimer, and Sylvan Scrying. This is the deck that the trophy leader has been grinding trophies with, and Tom Hepp is absolutely crushing with this. If you're interested in picking this one up and trying it out, there is a whole podcast episode as well as a sideboard guide available for this. Coming in at number 5, I recommend giving Slivers a go. This deck is also known as meat hooks because, the slivers look like this and they're doing clawing and stuff. And this is a tribal Ether Vial deck. Playing a tribal deck in Legacy is pretty powerful because you get to play a playset of Cavernous Souls, and the mana is really good in this deck because you have a whole bunch of rainbow lands, including one made specifically for Slivers. As far as the details of the deck list go, you're playing a handful of Lords and Slivers that give your Slivers all sorts of neat tricks, but the coolest one is probably Hibernation Sliver, which says all Slivers have pay 2 life, return this permanent to its owner's hand. Now, when your Slivers basically can't die, and you just get to save them all for the cost of 2 life, that's really annoying for your opponent. And if you have a couple of Ether Vials and can put them back into play immediately, that's just disgusting. The other Sliver I want to highlight is Crystalline Sliver, which gives all of your Slivers Shroud. That ability, not particularly fair. At number 4, I recommend Nickfit. Alright, weird deck name, we don't have time to get into it. Nickfit is a Veteran Explorer ramp deck that uses things like Cabal Therapy or Phyrexian Tower to go and sacrifice Veteran Explorer, and you have a bunch of basic lands, and hopefully your opponent doesn't, and you get to ramp out all sorts of cool things. This version of Nickfit is very similar to a deck called Applejacks, again, we don't have time to get into it, that suspends a Greater Gargadon, and then puts a Titania in play. You use the Greater Gargadon to sacrifice all of your lands, and every land that you sacrifice gives you a 5/3 elemental. Well, that sounds pretty disgusting. In addition to that, you also have a Green Sun Zenith package, which allows you to get silver bullets for matchups, whether it's a large body that has life gain and some graveyard hate attached to it, a creature that can single-handedly shut down some artifact-based decks, or all sorts of other things that you need at your disposal. Alright, now we're getting to some of the spiciest deck lists as we move into the top 3, and first up is Urza Echo. This is an artifact synergy deck based largely around Urza Lord High Artificer, which lets you turn all of these artifacts into mana rocks, as well as creates a large token that can just kill your opponent. In addition to that, we have some graveyard-based synergy so that all these things can come back via Emery. We have Echo of Eons to draw a whole bunch of cards after we've played all of our 0-drops, and if we're really lucky, we can play that off of an LED as early as turn 1, or if we're really getting nasty, we can put a Hull Breacher into play first, and then we get 7 treasure tokens, and our opponent does not get to draw cards. Holding the rest of this deck together, we have Karn the Great Creator, plus a very impressive sideboard package that can win you the game or destroy a bunch of your opponent's lands. This deck is extremely powerful, and it's a great time to try it out, because Hull Breachers are real expensive on Magic Online. Coming in at number 2, we have Shark Court. Okay, I have some explaining to do. I gotta go fast. Shark Typhoon is a great finisher for control decks because it's uncounterable if you use the cycling ability to create a giant shark. Or if things go really late for some reason, you can technically put this card into play and make a bunch of sharks that way as well. That's the shark side of the thing. Then there are 2 different court cards that let you become the monarch and then have some sort of ability once those are in play. And let me tell you, when you have a Howling Mine and your opponent doesn't, you tend to win those games. Holding this together is a very strong blue-white shell that also features a decent number of enchantments, as well as replenish to bring them back. Just like the previous deck list, Legacy Staple Hullbreacher is here as well. And, that maybe is going to be okay if our opponent is the Monarch. This list was developed by Bosch and Roll on YouTube, and there's content there if you're interested in seeing this deck in action. All right, and coming in at number 1 is Birthing Pod, specifically Yorion Birthing Pod. So I tried this deck out a couple of weeks ago, and it's really sweet, and it made me miss the era of Modern that's long since passed. Birthing Pod allows you to tutor your library for all sorts of wonderful creatures, and this Birthing Pod list in particular is based around the Kiki Jiki combo. So you can combine Kiki Jiki with something like Corridor Monitor, Deceiver Exarch, Restoration Angel, Felidar Guardian in order to make infinite tokens and kill your opponent. That sounds super sweet. And this deck is just playing a lot of the best value-oriented cards that Legacy has to offer. You have Yorion as a companion, so you have a little bit of insurance against flooding out as well. And you have a lot of great sideboard options like Carpet of Flowers and Veil of Summer and Sylvan Library. I loved what was going on with this deck list, and this was one of those times where I got done recording my video with the deck and immediately wanted to play it again. Alrighty, folks, there you have it. Those are my top 10 recommendations for decks to try out in Legacy. Again, these recommendations are kind of focused on having a good time and trying out some things that are a little bit spicy or unusual. If you want to be winning, you can pick a deck like Rug Delver or Snoko, and that's probably the easiest way to go. But if you want to enjoy your lone account to the fullest, give those a try. If you think I missed something or something else should have been included in this list, throw those in the comments and we can chat about deck lists. And if you really enjoyed any of these and you want to see some content with them, donation information is below the stream. Have a great rest of the day, and hopefully we'll see some new cards in the next set that will bring some new and exciting things to Legacy. But, like, maybe not too exciting, because the last year was a little crazy, if you know what I mean. Member companions? Remember Underworld Breach? I remember.